Hello, and welcome to another episode of Council Connections. I'm your host, Christine Johnson, and I'm here today with Councilman at Large, Martin Mitchell. So it's been 2 years since he's been sworn in for his first term on the council. So we just wanted to check in, hear how things have been going, and hear about his plans for the remainder of his term. Hi, Mr. Mitchell. How are you?
I'm doing very well.
Glad to have you back.
Thank you for having me back. It's great to be back with Laurel TV and the fine production crew.
Okay, so we're going to start. Just ask you, how have things been going? How has it been on the council thus far?
We have had an onslaught of challenges, but I will say things have been going well. My colleagues and I have been hard at work. Elderly tax credits, NOMO, April. Now we're planning a bunch of festivities coming up. But like you said, or like I said earlier, there has been some challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, it's been a great experience. Meeting new neighbors, seeing the new businesses come to town, and so I am definitely looking forward to the rest of this term.
Okay. And so, like you mentioned, there have been some challenges. So we wanted to start off in general, talking about how it is in general. But we do want to talk about and narrow down some of the things that you've been working on. So a few things that we wanted to talk about today was the rent stabilization. So explain that to us. Tell us kind of what it is and what you've been doing to work, help constituents in that area.
Sure. So rent stabilization, it's been a topic probably, you probably have heard of it by now because it's a hot topic and it's happening all over, or the conversation is being had all over. And rent stabilization basically means, when you're a renter, annually, your lease you generally would increase when you get that new lease. And so what rent stabilization does is it caps it at a certain percentage in which that lease can actually increase each year. And so, at the county, we now have a 3%, which is a temporary one for a year with a work group hoping to do something temporary. At Mount Rainier, they have 60% of CPI. And so, that's what rent stabilization is. And then, of course, not to be confused with rent control, because a lot of times, you'll hear the landlord lobbyists say rent control, or the major proponent of, this new age policy, or I'll say like a second wave. This is like a second wave rent control, but at least the way I like to tell people is it's not as strict. Like a lot of times when you look at the New York rent control, it's usually to a specific dollar amount, and it usually doesn't have as many exemptions or exceptions as, a lot of the policies that are being proposed, under the name of rent stabilization.
So like you mentioned, we've been having this talk for quite some time now. We've had some talks in the city, and then we actually had a pause for city talks, and then we decided to work with PG County and their county laws. So how has that been working out for us?
Well, I would say that, I still am optimistic that we're going to do something, as a municipality, and I'm hopeful. Because, one of the things about the county bill is it doesn't even go in effect until April 17th. So a lot of people believe since it passed, it goes in effect automatically. It doesn't even go effect until April 17th. And then the thought is it is temporary. And so what's to happen if, the advocacy dwindles, in a year from now, and, they don't have that same advocacy, that same push, is there something that is going to be permanent? And so I'm hopeful that something's going to happen. And I think that it'll give local bodies courage, because, it happened at the county level. So, they no longer can say, I want to see, the county do it. Now you guys can explore. You've already seen the county do it.
Right.
And so, I do have faith that we'll do something as a municipality. As far as how it's been going at the county level, one of the things they're working on is one of the amendments they accepted from the county executive was to exclude affordable housing. And the problem with that is that's a lot of senior homes and senior facilities. So there were a lot of seniors that were on the front lines advocating for rent stabilization, even though they weren't getting the highest brunt of the increases. A 5 to 6% increase for them was substantial, as it may not be to like someone who's still working every day, who has two people bringing in the income, so for a senior citizen, that like $7,500 is monumental.
Right.
Right. And, so I think that, that's something that we're still trying to make sure to address at the county level because, after signing, that was one of the things that they found out is that that bill kind of excludes a lot of those places that receive local, state, and federal funding.
Right.
So
So just throwing it out there, since we are working with on the county level, but things aren't progressing as fast as maybe as we would hope, and people are still calling with concerns. How would you feel, or have you all even thought about having a housing level on the city, a housing department on the city level? Because we don't have one here at the city, but is it something that's being considered, or have you thought about it?
I would a housing department. That actually sounds pretty cool. I would love the thought of a housing department, and I yeah, that's a great idea. I would hope that something like that happens. I know the last conversation we were talking about some type of board that would regulate the rent increases from year to year. So that's similar to what Mount Rainier did. But I think the biggest thing also to remind people is that rent stabilization isn't the only thing that is going to help tenants or going to protect our renters, right? Like one of the conversations that came out of rent stabilization was great because we found out like other things that can be fixed, right? Like one of the things is making sure that you mandate rent leases. We found out then that handshake lease agreements are legal.
Oh,
And
really?
so I remember, like you could do a handshake lease agreement.
Right.
And so we found out then, like, oh, maybe we as a city, maybe we should do something, that actually protects renters. And the thought is, I said, it should even be month by month
Right.
because
right.
everyone should know my rent is going to go up, or these are the certain terms that I have to, live by. And if I don't, it's in writing, right? So both of us are clear. It's no gray area.
Right.
And so, there's a lot of things that came out of the rent stabilization conversation. A lot of what you hear is just build more housing. We just need more housing, right? But that isn't
That's
just the
right.
answer, right? We need smart development. We need smart growth. We need to make sure that we're not just building more single family, but we're building, around transit oriented areas, right? We want to make sure that I think a conversation that I always have is when we have the developers, are we asking them, how many of those units are deeply affordable?
Okay.
Because affordable units, a lot of times, that's
Right.
that market rate, which is killing people, right? So how many of those are deeply affordable?
Okay.
And the conversation a lot of times, we can't afford to do any deeply, but that needs to be more of the conversation.
Right. So the developers are in on these conversations that you're having, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Are they the most willing participants, or do they
Right.
necessarily want to change the way they do business? Not always, but
Right.
yes, developers need to be a part of these conversations as well.
Yeah, because business versus living and people being able to maintain. So I guess you got to find that balance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
I try to remind the developers that and the landlords when they talk about the market, the people of the market.
Right.
So they I understand it has to be a balance, and you have to be able to make money and you have to be able to sustain the economy, but the economy, of course, is also the people that have to be able to continue being able to pay rent, being able to continue to live, eat, pay the
Right.
bills.
Right. Fine line trying to work that out. I guess that's been quite a job for you. Definitely appreciate your work on that. So we're still in talks and you're still working things out with that, right?
Well, yes. As far as the city, we hope that we hope to resume at least that conversation and get support from the county, because the thought is this is not an issue that's going to go away.
Right.
Rent is still increasing, and I think that one of the staunch points that I just realized a few weeks ago is when we started the battle, kind of getting in between some landlords raising rent and trying to negotiate. We started that battle. It was at 332 11th Street. There's only one senior still there. It was 10 that we were helping, but there's only one senior still there now. And I think like the way she feels now is I think she's really looking for a place to move. We're going to move very soon because the building doesn't feel the same anymore.
Right,
like none of those same people that she lived around the last 20, 30 years live next to her. And,
Right.
And she knows that the impending increase is coming,
So how do you feel about that as a council member? Do you feel like you've let them down in some kind of way, or do you feel like you're still? How does that make you feel?
I mean, to be honest with you, it feels like we succeeded in many ways, right? By having those short term wins, being able to help them keep their rent lower, by being able to, advocate so hard that the county did something right. Like
Okay.
I'm happy by that, but I'm definitely not happy to hear that, that community looks a
Right.
lot different. I mean, so, that leads me to believe that there's still work to be done because, the thought is like Laurel, Laurel's my home. Laurel, Laurel is a place that I grew up in. Laurel is a place that, I will continue to live, with my kids and, my family. My grandma lives on Main Street. And so like, it was sad to kind of hear that like those people left Laurel. Like I think, she's still here, but only one of those original 10 are still in Laurel. Other than that, a lot of them, they just couldn't afford to continue living here either, so.
We got to continue to work and keep talking about it. And I think you brought up some other things, some other tenant protections. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about regarding that? Some other things that came up?
Well, as far as tenant protections, you're going to hear this at the state level all the time. And we had the conversation about it. It was about just cause eviction. And, the just cause eviction basically means that like when you're passing these, it's important to have vacancy. It's important to have vacancy decontrol, and it's important to have just cause, because just cause basically means that, for the landlord to evict somebody or not renew their lease, they need to have just cause. And so, we're not preempted at the city level. We have to pass a state bill to get the ability to pass just cause laws at the city or the county level. And so that is a bill that it's almost fought as hard as rent stabilization at the state level. And, a lot of landlords feel like they should have the right to be able to evict somebody for any reason or not renew their lease for any reason. And, that is problematic, especially if you pass rent stabilization, because then you see people kind of, forced out in some ways. And if you don't have that vacancy decontrol, they can just, or that vacancy control, as soon as that rent stabilized person moves out, that unit just becomes deregulated. So then they can charge market rate or a certain percentage above what the previous tenant was paying. So sometimes they're encouraged to push people out. It's some, this is the way capitalism works, right? Like
that's amazing. Like learning new things. Like, because I don't rent, so if you don't rent, you're not aware of these things. But it's amazing what's going on.
Yes, and yes, we need to continue with the rent stabilization.
Right.
I mean, rent assistance, rental assistance, because rental assistance, keeps people out of evictions. And I think that one of the bigger things is like, what does it cost a society for an eviction, right? Like a lot of times they need more government assistance if they get evicted, right? Like, people are completely displaced. Their lives are completely turned upside down. And so like just hearing how many people Lars has been able to help, with the ARPA funding and other grant funding that they've gotten, is absolutely amazing. But the thought is, the scary thing is like, the reason Lars is helping more people is because funding sources are drying up in other places. So more people are finding out and being pushed towards Lars, right? And so like that's also one thing. But yeah, people need it.
Right. I say we can go on for this forever. Yes. We can do a whole episode on this. We did want to talk about a couple of things, but just to remind people, like you said, the conversations are still happening. There's still issues that you are pursuing. So we want to make sure that they're aware of that.
Yes, absolutely.
So next, we did want to talk about the collective bargaining. That's been a hot topic too. Yes. So I can imagine how that's been going for you. Yes. So share with us some things with that.
Well, so the workers, or at least one worker, came to me probably 2 months ago and said, "Hey, I want you to talk to this union guy. I used to work in a union, several years ago. I think that, Laurel needs a union for several reasons." So I said, "Okay, I'll hear you out, young man." So I got on the Zoom with him and the union guy. They told me probably about 30 minutes why they believed they needed a union. Some of it was they needed better equipment. They needed better clothing. They believed that the pay wasn't commensurate to other areas, and the increases would be far better if they were unionized. And, I got that. I understood that. And, then I reached out to a good ally on the council, Carl DeWalt. And, he was like, absolutely. He supported unions. And for the most part, he knew a lot of the public workers, because he was a police officer in the city. He lived in the city, just very grassroots. And so, at this point, they had already gotten their authorization cards. So we knew that at least 90% of their workforce had signed on, and, they want, to collectively bargain and want to unionize. And so, from there they decided to let's go to the council, and let's go to the council to state that we want to unionize, and, let's ask for collective bargaining rights. And with that being said, a lot of them were nervous, but we were just like, at the end of the day, we support you, and you have two council members right here, and
Right.
we're going to make sure that you guys have support. And so they came out and they asked for collective bargaining rights, and the biggest response was kind of like, we support you guys, but we just need to wait. We need to wait, and let's take time to investigate this. And my biggest problem with that is like, time is finite, right? And the reason that the reason that they came out so hard is because they believe that it's something that they need now. They believe that the conversation needs to begin now,
Right.
and it's not something that they can essentially wait for, that they should be waiting for,
Well,
right?
I believe they should be able to do the research, like we mentioned in one of the council meetings, like to have their respect and do the research. But how long do you think it should take for like the mayor or other council members to do their research and come to an agreement for the collective bargaining unit? You know how long that should normally take?
To be honest, we've seen it take a different amount of time. For
Okay.
the police department, I'm sure it was a long battle. But when I look back at the resolution that passed in collective bargaining, it was only a paragraph. It was like because basically, I think a lot of people are confused. As a council, all we can do is give them the rights to sit down at the table, have an election, and then we come back and sign their collective bargaining once they're finished negotiation. So a lot of times, like when I'm talking to my colleagues, they're talking about like, oh, how much salary, or this a minute question, and I'm just trying to remind them, our question is, do we give them right? Do we give them the
Okay.
rights later? Or do we give them the rights now? But the thought is how long should it take to pass a charter amendment? Of course, it would take the work sessions, the through public hearings. That's what it would take to pass charter amendment, and then it would take it was 50 days for that to go into effect. So then they could start actually officially, I guess, bargaining and negotiating, especially if it's written into the charter, because the collective bargaining one that the police department has is they can't they can't they can't actually begin negotiation until a year after this is signed. So
Oh,
that
okay.
that was kind of one of the provisions that I had read in the old one that was signed with the Laurel Police Department.
Okay.
And so I mean, to be honest with you, it could take a long time, but it could take not a very long time, because it seems like a lot of us are for it, right? And the biggest thing is like, us as a council, we already have the investigation. We have the empirical evidence right in front of us, the workers. We have the fact that we can look at the collective bargaining for the police department, see how simple it is. So our grand question is, do we want this to happen now, or do we want this to happen later? And one of my biggest concerns was, one, if we wait for it to happen, we already know that that's not going to happen until the fiscal year 2025. Any of those considerations. The second biggest thing was like, if we wait, does it happen with this council? Because given that said, if you're starting the conversation in June, you only have July, September, October, because November there'll be really no council session before the election. So then it's the question of, am I going to pass this, in 3 months, with conviction?
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Time is of the essence, is what I'm hearing.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so that's another one that we're going to keep talking about and make sure that people are aware of, so we can make sure it keeps happening and keep rolling, going through the process, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So support the essential workers. We're going to support.
Okay. All right, so again, we want to move on to just another topic that you mentioned that you wanted to discuss in your this interview today, and talk briefly about, because I think all these topics we can go on and on about. We want to talk about the cannabis legalization in Maryland. So share with us your thoughts about that and how we're moving forward as a city.
So I think last time I spoke about, of course, the cannabis being on the ballot, same way Westmore was on the ballot, right? And so cannabis now has passed. It's working its way through the legislature. It looks like there's a lot of things in this. It's almost 100-page bill, right? And one of the biggest things in the bill is canopies. So there is going to be like outside space. So there is the possibility for people to obtain those type of licenses to, have, like, let's just say if they have a dispensary and then have a, cannabis canopy, right? And so there will be those options for the municipalities. I think as a municipality, we should look at this of like, how we make a safe, responsible usage, but also how we, kind of increase cannabis tourism. Because we know that, Maryland is now a medical state. Maryland is now also a recreational state, especially by July 1st of this year. And so the thought is like, how do we, how do we benefit from those taxes? How do we benefit from, the people that are coming, to the city? Because Maryland's already cannabis, or sorry, Laurel. We have True Wellness. We have Greenpoint. Right around the corner, we have Revolution Relief. We have herbiculture. I just recently visited the Cylon House. So that's just kind of right outside of Laurel. So I think that we should invite cannabis tourism. I know that we're going to have to look at some of our code. I just hope that we are responsible. We're very deliberate, but we're inviting it and opening. So we're not, kind of shutting off those businesses, because they should be looked at as legal businesses. I know that, when I was on the Board of Appeals, there was a big fight with the diner and, do we change history? And I know they all work things out, but the biggest thing is like, you've seen Greenpoint in the community and you've seen them doing great things. You've seen them donating now. So like, people have become more familiar with these, businesses and learn that like, they're not here for the riffraff. You don't hear about a lot of robberies or break-ins or like, riffraff. It's a very good business. Okay. And so, yeah, we should invite that.
All right. We look forward to hearing definitely more about that. So we've talked about a couple heavy subjects, a couple things that we're talking about during the city. So we're going to lighten it up just a little bit and share some of the successes, because you wrote about the Laurel High School wrestling success. So they've been doing a great job. And talk about how they've been doing.
Yeah. So, Laurel, I think last time I was here, I talked about that the fact that they had their first state champion. Well, not first, but the first one in, I think, almost 30 years. Wow. And I was very proud of Alex. And this year they had the most state placers in, maybe 30 years. So it was like kind of consecutive great years. I believe they were 13-1. So they only had one loss to Wise. Wise was, we ended up winning counties and regionals. But the Spartans are going to be back next year to hopefully, come out on top. But, I do want to congratulate them. But they also had a very young coaching staff. So I was very proud of that, because their head coach, I coached him when he was in high school. And the assistant coach, I coached him when he was in high school. They were both teammates. And then the assistant coach, I coached him when he was. So it was kind of like, I felt great, but I also felt like a little bit of an old head. Right. Like I had been there for at least a decade plus seeing generations. And now some of these kids are having kids. And so, that was great to see, not only the development of the adults as coaches, but to see those kids reach the pinnacle of their high school wrestling career. Some of them, it was, only their second or third season. And so, I'm very proud of the Laurel High School wrestling team. And, I do hope them continued success. And, I know a few of them are going to continue on wrestling in college next year. So it is, of course, more challenging at the next level. But, I'm definitely very, very proud about that. And we just recently did a watch party. But we also invited Pilati over to watch the next level, because I always think it's important for people to, kind of see that next level and, kind of see that in their shoes and aspire to be, like that. And so hopefully some of them continue to wrestle in college. But, if they didn't, at least we had a good time. Right. And, enjoy each other.
I like that you still continue to support them and spotlight wrestling. Like, sometimes some sports don't get as much recognition as other ones do, but I'm glad that you continue to highlight the successes of the wrestling team, and we do wish them well.
Yes, okay. Absolutely. My kids just started wrestling, so that was a great thing. It was their first season.
Okay. Yes. So we'll see them growing up and see what they can do. Get you on a mat.
not pressuring them, but if they do decide to wrestle, yes, definitely see them, and I'll be a proud papa.
Okay. Sure. Cool. Okay. And lastly, we just want to talk about some of the events and community engagement that you have planned or that you have going on. Want to share those with us?
Yes. So of course, one of the things I'm working on is, a fentanyl awareness and prevention event. It wasn't something that was necessarily on the top of my mind. Of course, I've seen it all the time, and we become, just desensitized to it. But then, a constituent really made me think, like, what is something that you can do around it? And so, I'm working with one of the pastors, and we're going to do an awareness and kind of prevention, and possibly even like a Narcan training. Okay. And I know that one of the things that he mentioned in the future was, you know, presenting to do like a civilian active shooter training. And so I'm excited to see his presentation and, you know, be engaged with that. But, you know, those are just a few of the events coming up. Of course, we have Second Chance Month coming up in April. So we look to have another expungement clinic, you know, helping people continue to clear their criminal record with freedom of paper.
Cool. And lastly, look, can I ask this now? Are you running again?
Yes, yeah, no, I'm definitely, you know, definitely going to run again. I mean, you know, it's the people's will for me to serve, and you know, it's a pleasure to serve. So
Okay.
definitely.
So yeah, just wanted to give you a chance to share like anything else you have coming up to finish out this term and then to prepare for your next term. Anything else you want to share?
Well, you know, of course, I just wanted to share that, you know, it's been a pleasure to, you know, work with the city. One of the things is, as a council person, every day I'm finding new businesses, finding, you know, new churches, finding new residents. New residents are finding me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's one of the great things, you know, about being, you know, on the ground. Like just last week, I found a new church that literally was around the corner from me that I never knew about this whole time. And, you know, I went there for a food drive and, you know, they said, hey, come check out this facility, their facility, and find out it's super large.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I never knew you guys were here.
Right.
So, you know, I encourage people to, you know, get out sometimes. It's nicer. Get out and walk your city. Right. And so like a lot of times that's where I really got to learn my community, is when I got out and walked my city.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, get out, walk your city. You'll be surprised at the new businesses that are popping up. You'll be surprised at the new enhancements at some of the parks, the Laurel
Mm-hmm.
parks. Yeah. And, you know, I think you'll be surprised at some of the new neighbors that you meet. And so like, you know, that's the one thing that, you know, I love. And kind of moving forward, I do want to make sure that, you know, we continue to keep up with those multicultural events.
Okay.
And so like, you know, that was one of the things that I've always spoke about. Like we should have diversity in the events,
Mm-hmm.
so we can represent the diverse culture that Laurel has, and that resides in Laurel. And so, you know, I do hope we continue to do that. You know, maybe like a Diwali or something like that.
Sounds good. I know Laurel is a big little city. Like you said, it's little, but there's so much stuff here. Like even when I rode around and see Christmas lights and things like that, you don't know what's tucked into the little places. So we're a nice, big little city that we need to, like you said, make sure we are aware of the diversity and things going on around.
Yes. Yes.
All right. So thank you so much.
Course,
like I said, we could spend more time here, but I don't want to take up all the time. But I'm glad that you were able to come and share the things that you've been working with in the city, and we just look forward to more work from you.
Yes, I appreciate it. Keep up the great work, Laurel TV.
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
We want to thank Councilman at Large Martin Mitchell for joining us today and sharing his plans and visions for the remainder of his term for the City Council. And as you can hear, there are a lot of things that were being discussed and a lot of information that will still be discussed throughout the coming terms. So be sure to pay attention to what's going on in your local government and be a part of what's going on. We look forward to sharing more information with you soon. Here's to local government. Stay connected.